Well, Jake, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
You bet. I'm really grateful for being on with you today, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, it's funny when I was inviting you, I was trying to remember if I'd had you on the podcast before because like we had at least one or two video calls and just with like all the people I talked to, I was like I can't remember if that was a podcast or not, but it was not, and I'm excited to officially have you on as a guest and hear some of your stories. But before we get there, if you could just introduce yourself and give everybody a little background about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm Jake Kubik. I'm the founder of Valuable Visits Fundraising Coaching. Like you, Kevin, we focus on helping nonprofits develop their fundraising strategy with a focus on major gifts. It's an entirely virtual model, and we have a whole AI tool building component to it right now, which is totally awesome and a whole lot of
Yeah.
fun. And we have other coaches that do unique things within Valuable Visits as well, from the AI and data automations piece to financial management and investment. And obviously, the main crux of what we do is major gifts fundraising coaching. And so it's great. I'm a North Dakota boy, grew up on a ranch in southwestern North Dakota. And so grew up with a good work ethic. And I think that's really boded well with going full time into this venture. And by the grace of God, He continues to provide, and it's been a tremendous amount of fun.
That's awesome. And so, do you still live in North Dakota, or where are you now?
Still in North Dakota. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because I think I've seen from some of your LinkedIn posts like you might have had some sort of ribbon cutting ceremony for starting the business, and it looked like you had a lot of relatives there and that kind of stuff. So that's awesome.
Yeah. It's the virtual model. That was actually at the chamber office because we don't have a physical location. Like right now, I'm in one of our bedrooms that's converted into my office, and this is where I have all of my coaching calls. All of my
Yeah,
client calls are right here, right at home, and yeah, it's great to be flexible like that with the business.
yeah, so cool. So, if I was telling Jake, I'm trying to record the video of this podcast and start putting these on YouTube. So we'll see if that works. So if it does work and you're watching this on YouTube, you can see an image of some bread in the background. And I know that happens to be sourdough, but you've got some sort of sourdough plays some role in your history as well.
Yeah, it's actually our first time dipping our toes into entrepreneurship. We started just a little side hustle business called Jake's Bakes, focusing on sourdough products. And this is actually a loaf. I really like doing the designs, like cutting the
Huh.
designs into the
Yeah.
loaves and making them really pretty. And this was one of the best ones I ever made and took a picture of. And there's a local artist here in town, and I really liked her style of art. And so I reached
Mm.
out to her and I sent her the image of the bread. And I said, "Do you think you could paint this in your
Mm.
style?" And she's like, "I think so." Well, and the thing
Yeah.
with art is, you kind of invest money into this project and you don't exactly know how it's going to turn
Mm.
out, but you've like purchased it. But
Yeah.
it turned out great. Like she nailed it with like all the shading and everything. You
Yeah.
did a great job. Yeah, so that's one of my best loaves ever that I've made is sourdough.
That's awesome. That's awesome. My sister-in-law has had ups and downs, but in the sourdough game, but she used to bake sourdough all the time, and it's so good.
Yeah, we love it, and like we sell at farmers markets. My wife and I co-founded a farmers market here in Bismarck, and it's great. Like the community around that, and like the
Yeah.
customer-facing conversations, and like selling your product from a retail. That definitely helped uh, develop a kind of a business savvy, customer
Yeah.
focused conversation, skills development that has definitely helped us with valuable visits for sure.
Indeed. Cool. Well, yeah, let's get into I know you've got some stories you've prepared from your time raising money. What's one of the first ones that comes to mind?
I wanted to share my first one ever.
Okay.
So
Nice.
when I first started in major gifts, uh, I went on an ask in a different town, or I went on a visit, and I didn't know anything about this lady. She really didn't
Mm.
have a ton of giving history with our organization. and the organization I was working with was in healthcare and a hospital system. And this person, I had the sense when visiting with her that she wanted to help in something in cardiology, something
Mm.
related to heart care. And she had shared some details, family situations. There's just cardiac care, heart issues is just like a common issue
Mm.
amongst people, and it particularly deeply impacted her family.
Mm.
And I remember the conversation going really well. It was probably a lot more transactional than I am now, just because that was like my first ever like big visit where I was planning
Yeah.
to make an ask. We had not necessarily uh, well, we had planned an ask on the visit, which was kind of my first mistake. Like I came in
Mm.
with a number uh, based on some giving history and it was a bigger number than what she had ever given before. And so I probably should have done a little more research, maybe jumped the gun a little bit.
Mm.
But during our conversation, I felt like it was an amount that I could ask for. It was 25 grand. So I made the ask for 25
Mm.
grand. She thought about it. We talked a little bit and she said yes. And so my first ask ever in a major gifts way was a yes. And I remember
Wow.
texting my boss. I was so happy. The driving home that night, I was just riding a high. And I remember
Mm.
like later that week, she gave me a call and declined coming through with the gift. So it was not only my first yes, my first closed gift, like signed gift, it was also my first decline.
Oh
And so I
man.
kind of got it all out of the way in the first one. And
Wait, what happened?
well, just she had some other financial stuff that came up with the family that was just unexpected. So it definitely
Yeah.
wasn't a situation where she was planning to dupe me or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
she had good intention to do this, and something came up literally that week. It was a timing thing, and she just
Mm.
didn't. She couldn't release that type of money that year, and so she declined. And
Yeah.
stayed in communication with her and kept up the relationship. But yeah, that was my first ever accepted gift and my first ever decline in the same week. And I think that set the tone just for what this could be like, my journey in major gifts. Uh, prior to that, I worked in
Mm.
healthcare administration. I was in long-term care
Mm.
and I had never asked people for money. And this is my first fundraising gig, and
Mm.
major gifts is just where God had planted me. And I feel like I'm a little bit of a people's person, and so I think I had the right
Mm.
type of personality for this type of work. But I didn't
Yeah.
truly know until I went on some visits. Certainly made that first ask, got the accepted gift, then got the decline a week later from the same donor, and that was the beginning of building the thick skin that you need
Yeah.
in fundraising and all the declines that you face. That was my first, but I'm grateful that it was.
Yeah, so good. That's such an important lesson, and it shocks me how, like, you got to learn this week one, but the idea that, like, you really can't count a gift until the money is in the bank. Like, obviously, you can make some projections and stuff like that, but until the money's in the bank, anything can happen.
Oh, yeah, it's true. And I think that is an indicator of like a really good experienced fundraiser, is that they don't simply count their chickens before they hatch. Like, yes, you've
Yeah.
made a good ask. Yes, you may have gotten a signed proposal, but say it's a multi-year pledge. You still have to be about the work of stewarding that donor and actually making sure the cash comes in. Because
Yeah.
great, we might have gotten, let's say, $200,000 worth of signed pledges, but if we only got 50 grand worth of cash in, that's a problem depending upon the
Yeah.
timeline in which those are supposed to come in. But a really good major gifts fundraiser not only asks for money, but they steward that donor's journey along, making sure that they actually have the money come in, because that's where the joy comes in giving.
Mm.
There's no impact without the cash. A signed
Yeah.
pledge, it's like likes on Facebook. You can't feed
Mm.
children with likes on Facebook. You need
Mm.
to pay for things, and that
Right.
takes money. A savvy fundraiser can ask for money and then follow up to make sure that it actually comes in.
Indeed. It reminds me of there was a fundraiser that I knew who uh, claimed to have closed a very large seven-figure gift on an annual basis in perpetuity for an organization that was going to cover all of its operating expenses, and so that every other gift in the future would go just towards the mission, essentially. And that wasn't real. I'm not sure if they were lying or if it was true and then the donor didn't come through, but it didn't happen. But they announced it to a bunch of other donors,
Oh man.
thinking it would be this amazing, wonderful thing. And a lot of those donors were like, felt like, oh wow, you found this ultra giant donor. Like my measly $10,000 doesn't seem to matter too much anymore, and so stopped giving. So yes, don't. The gift is not in until it is in, and act accordingly for sure.
Yeah, I like that story you brought up, and it makes me think of a current client of ours. They actually, in reality, have the opportunity to sell some assets that were donated to them a long time ago. These are land
Mm,
assets, and they really haven't been generating really pretty trivial amounts of money for them on an annual basis. Uh, and if they sold the land, they got some valuations on it. If they sold the land and put the amount that it's appraised at right now into an endowment, an average conservative rate of return of around 5% would actually offset their entire operating costs annually. If all that money came in at one
yeah,
time
yeah,
and then was
yeah.
invested after a year, the interest that would come out of that on an annual basis would cover 100% of their annual operating
Mm,
costs today, and then you grow that into the future. So like for that's really kind of exciting proposition with one of my clients right now, is that could potentially be a reality.
yeah,
A lot of red tape to work through and details, but
right.
that could be a possibility. And then that's really a sweet spot, because then you can tell your
Mm,
donors that a dollar is a dollar is a dollar that goes to the
mm,
area that you're passionate about. There's no skimming that 20% off the top to cover
mm,
operating costs and overhead, which is important. I think there's a lot of education for donors about, you
mm.
know, this mission is making an impact, but it costs money to make an impact, and so it's okay that
Right. Yeah, yeah.
some portion of every gift goes to pay for the people that are out there doing the work, that are
Mm,
asking for money, some of those overhead costs. But if you can be in a position where you can say every dollar you give to us is going straight to that hospital,
mm,
going straight to that university, going straight to that homeless shelter, that's a sweet spot to be in.
mm. For sure. Well, yeah. What else you got? What else is on the list?
One other story I wanted to share, a little bit of an emotional one for me.
Mm,
When I was working at the University of Mary, and I won't give any specific details, obviously, but in particular, there's a donor that was
mm,
honoring his wife with a gift, or he was considering it, and it was pretty emotional. His wife had passed away, and he wanted to honor her in some way.
mm,
And so I had an idea of a particular area of the university that I thought would resonate with him based on conversations that I had had. And we probably had maybe less, just under a handful of conversations before the ask came
mm,
through, just because it was a really an emotional thing. They've made philanthropic gifts in the past to many different organizations, major gift level, but it was always together. And they always
mm,
made those decisions together. And this was one of the first ones where he would be making without his sweetheart, and
mm,
it was really an emotional deal. But one of the beautiful things that after we did some tours, after we had some conversation, I made an ask, a big ask, and it didn't take him long to say yes. And he committed to that major gift. And I remember him sharing with me the joy and like the calm that brought that to him, because he knows that this type of money, this
mm,
level that we needed to this particular initiative, would have been something she would have loved to participate
mm,
in that. And that brought him a lot of joy in being able to commit to this gift. It brought him a lot of peace to be able to do it.
mm,
And I think at the end of the day in fundraising, the mechanism in which we actually make real the things our missions do is money. That just is the mechanics of it. But I think the underlying piece is joy. Like, we operate with the currency of joy as fundraisers. It's a pretty special industry to work in, because we're kind of these arbiters, these conduits to be able to connect people, in particular major gifts, people of really financially accomplished means, people of wealth, to areas of your mission that they can truly make a big difference in. And then being able to steward them really well by telling them the impacts that their money's having, that's using the currency of joy. You're providing that opportunity to them. And I've shared this in some workshops I've done. I share this with clients. People of wealth, they can purchase almost anything they want in this life. They can pay cash for the car, they can pay cash for the vacation home, they can buy almost anything they desire. But the thing that's never for sale is the joy you feel in giving your money away. And you can only feel that level of joy by giving. And a fundraiser is in a really unique spot to be able to present those opportunities to feel that level of joy to a donor. I just think that's really, really cool, and something that's not underscored enough in our industry and talked about
Yeah.
enough, is just that joy piece and how fundraisers are conduits for that. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's one of your like tagline or something is be a joy dealer
That's right.
on your LinkedIn post. What's your yeah, what do you think started that interest for you? This particular interest and focus on joy.
I think because so much of it is revealed in the work of fundraising, and so much of it is not revealed when fundraising is done poorly. And I think fundraising that's done poorly is transactional fundraising, where we focus so much on getting donors in the front door, the discovery work, the entry level work of more donors, that we forget about the people, especially in major gifts, that have given us money on the back end, that we need to continue to cultivate those relationships, and then eventually ask them and invite them to make contributions in the future so they can experience more joy. But it's seeing that. It's people that are coming to see the buildings that they help build with their financial gifts, seeing the people that are impacted through a program they helped start. People cry. You got donors crying about this stuff. Their families, they're inviting their families to participate in recognition events. At a base level, I think all humans seek happiness. We all are striving to be happy. Some people find that in things that are not ideal. Some people find that in more healthy ways. But in terms of fundraising, people who give, especially from the monetary side of things, in a major way, they have a tremendous opportunity to experience a lot of joy in making a difference in the lives of the people they want to serve, but through the mission that they can financially support that actually does that work. It all comes down to joy. And the more that we can talk about that with our donors, the more we can talk about that with our leadership teams, that like this is the currency in which we operate. It's joy. Yes, we're asking for money. We're not simply like marketers. And I like to say that, all fundraising is also marketing, but not all marketing is fundraising. Marketers aren't asking for money. Fundraisers are asking for money and representing your mission at the same time in a marketing fashion. But at the base level, we have to let people know that we're inviting them to experience joy in giving money to our mission. And the only way you can do that is by giving to this mission to help the people that you want to help, and partnering that way. It's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, yeah. What else you got? Any fail visits? Do you have any where things didn't go according to plan, or yeah, anything that went wrong?
Oh boy. Uh, there was one donor in particular who, they owned a construction company, and I thought, because of all the work, you see their vehicles around all like across the state. You're traveling, they're seemingly working on every project, and so they got to have money, right? I mean, they got to have money.
Yeah.
And approaching those individuals and those businesses, whatever the case may be, I have made the mistake of assuming that just because people have money, that they want to give it away. And I've been on conversations where I've made that assumption and I've made an ask and I've been told no, or that my number was way too high. And in some cases, uh, it would offend people, not to the degree where they'd be angry, but they'd be taken back by the number. Uh,
Yeah.
and we sometimes we'd be able to kind of salvage it and negotiate or settle on a lower number that was more appropriate for them. But back to this construction example, I had a conversation with them towards the end of the year, and with industries like that, they live and die by the projects that they get every
Mm.
single year, and so their
Mm.
philanthropy uh, corresponds with obviously how financially well they're doing. And
Mm.
I went in towards the end of the year after having some conversations throughout the beginning of the year, teeing up a specific project. They were interested in it, and I went in, and based on some questions I asked and seeing some of their philanthropy on some donor walls around the area, uh,
Mm.
I thought I could ask them for 100 grand. And I went in. I had a proposal. It was a really nice one sheeter proposal. I brought it in. I presented it to them, and they said no to the
Mm.
whole thing.
Mm.
And what I should have done thinking back is I should have checked in with them on business. I just assumed
Mm.
based on our conversations that things were going really well, and they didn't lead me to believe otherwise. But I had a conversation with them, made an ask, and they said no. And it was super
Mm.
embarrassing for me because maybe I could have came in with a different number. Maybe I could have been more well informed. Maybe my timing could have been better. But I remember just putting that number out there and them like their faces going almost white at that
Mm.
number. Uh, it would have been the biggest gift that they would have ever committed to, that was for sure. But I
Mm.
shot for the moon and missed completely.
Mm.
I hope I didn't offend them. They didn't lead me to believe that I did.
Mm.
But I think a good diligent amount of research as best as you can. You don't get wrapped up in that stuff too much. But I
Yeah.
think a little bit more research and diligence around that would have saved my butt. But
Mm.
that was a learning lesson. That was a learning lesson for sure.
Indeed. Good. What else you got? Any other stories come to mind?
Yeah. One more that I had written down. Uh, this is a story in perseverance
Hmm.
and stewarding people regardless of their current capacity. But if they were generous in the past, especially in a major way, we want to make sure that we're still following up and taking good care of them. There is a In the springtime when I was working in healthcare, uh, I had a conversation with a couple, and they had in the past, like a number of years, have given an IRA retirement account distribution of about 10
Hmm.
grand, and they were pretty steady Eddie. And the last couple of years, they weren't able to do it.
Hmm.
And so I re-engaged them. I was talking to them, and I had come into the picture of employment in that 2 year window where they had a gap of giving, and visited with them in the springtime. And they let me know that they weren't able to make a contribution. They wish they could
Hmm.
at the level that they were able to, and even more,
Hmm.
but they just didn't have the cash. And so I could have decided to not interact with them and just move on to the next person. But these
Hmm.
people, they were major donors, like cumulative lifetime giving. These people have given substantially to
Hmm.
the organization in smaller chunks over time.
Hmm.
But it would have been easy for me to just kind of cast them off to the side because I had never solicited a gift from them. I was new.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to move on to the next donor, or I could have moved
Hmm.
on to the next donor and just pursued those leads. Well, the summertime went through. I did a couple of touch points, phone calls, emails out to them, keeping them informed of some things that they've given to in the past. And then one of the reach outs I did in the fall, and I try to touch base with every major donor a couple of times a year, maybe
Hmm.
quarterly on that type of cadence. And in the fall, I had reached out again, and they said they wanted to meet, that they did want to make a gift. And so we visited, and we talked about the program that they were interested in and some of the updates that have happened through the summer. And they wanted to cut a big check for 100 grand.
Hmm.
Now they've been giving 10 grand increments before, and they
Hmm.
just told me in the spring that they couldn't give anything.
Hmm.
And what they had revealed to me is that the wife's mom passed away and left them a huge inheritance,
Mm,
something unanticipated, something
mm,
super generous on the mom's part. And they wanted to share that gift with us by giving
mm,
to an organization that they were passionate about at a greater level, 10 times the amount they've ever given in the past in a single year. And they made that gift. So I think it's a
wow.
lesson in perseverance and stewardship, that just because someone's situation is one way at the beginning of a year
Mm,
doesn't mean it's going to stay that same for good or bad through the
right.
remainder of the year. Back to the construction story, sounded good in the beginning, didn't end up well at the end. This is the inverse of that. Didn't sound
Mm,
promising in the beginning, but kept in contact and ended up being a really joy filled closed gift in the fall. And we have all kinds of donors in our database, and we're stretched thin so many different ways. And certainly we're going to drop the ball from time to
mm,
time, and we're going to have donors are going to fall through the cracks. We're going to miss a communication window that we had scheduled on our calendar, but we got to do our best to keep up with our people who are already for sure invested in our mission,
mm,
because they want to give again. That's the fruits of
mm,
stewarding people well in major gifts in particular, is that hopefully they want to give major gifts again and again and again. And for these
mm,
people, they appreciated that I had stayed in contact with them throughout the summer. And when I made a contact in the fall, they said they were ready. Maybe if I had
yeah.
never made that call, maybe if I casted it off to the side, continuing to assume through information I had that they weren't going to give, but if I wouldn't have done that stewardship touch point, that gift may or may not have happened, or may have not have happened right there in that time of year, maybe sometime down the road when they thought about it. But it was a really beautiful closed gift in a
Yeah.
situation where money came out of nowhere unplanned, actually through sadness, through a passing of a loved
Mm,
one. But through that tremendous generosity, through that
mm,
inheritance, and they wanted to share that. It was awesome.
yeah. So cool. Yeah, love that. Well, I mean, you could say that was a valuable visit, which takes us to the next part of our journey together. Is yeah. Well, okay. First off, how old are you?
I think we're the same age. I'm 32.
Okay, yeah. So am I. 32 as well. Okay, so you're 32, and now you're married, have a couple
You
kids,
got 3 kids.
3 kids, and doing the solopreneur. Well, I guess you got a little more assistance over on your end,
Yeah.
but made the jump and started the business. Tell me how that. Yeah, tell me like how you even had the inklings of an idea originally, and then what led to you making the leap.
Yeah. I love telling this story because it's just
Hmm,
God has had His hand on every step of the way of this.
hmm,
This conversation really started in the summer of 2023.
hmm,
Picture yourself sitting at a lake cabin, overlooking a beautiful lake at sunset. My wife's family has a lake cabin. We were sitting on this deck, and my brother and my sister-in-law were visiting us during that summer, and we were just chit-chatting about life and chit-chatting about work. And my
hmm,
sister-in-law leans over to me and she goes, "Jake, have you ever thought about teaching other people how to fundraise? You seem to be
hmm.
passionate about it. I presume you're
You
good at it
never
if you
shut
like
up
it."
about it.
Yeah, yeah, right. Would that be something that you would want to do? Is teach people how to do this work? And I said, maybe. I mean, isn't that
Hmm,
something for people that have decades of experience? That are
hmm,
eyeballing retirement, and that's kind of the type of person or consultant or
hmm,
coach that people look for is with decades of experience. It's not
hmm,
exactly me. She said, well, maybe, but if you have a gift and you're good at it and you have a heart to teach, you should explore that.
hmm,
And that planted a seed that summer 2023. And as we got into the fall, that really started, it never left my mind that maybe there's something to helping other missions beyond just the one I was working in to teach people how to do this. And so I started researching what this would look like. I came across your course, reached out to
hmm,
you, uh, and I talked to mentors and I talked to my boss at work and I said, hey,
hmm,
like I'm thinking about teaching people how to do what I do. Is that okay while I work here? I don't want there to
hmm.
be
Yeah,
any
yeah,
conflicts. And at the time, I was at the University of Mary, and I talked to my boss, and he said, "Yeah, like that's kind of what we do. As long as you don't fundraise for anyone else, you can certainly teach people and share your craft. That's what we do.
mm,
And that really launched moving forward with
mm,
one coming up with a name. My wife and I went back and forth on this, like, what do we call this thing? Have some
mm,
semblance of professionalism, and we wanted to have a degree of echo of what we actually provide. And we
mm,
landed on valuable visits. That could be any type of valuable visit. It doesn't. We added fundraising coaching to it to add clarity. But what
mm,
we do is we teach people how to have visits of high value, focusing on major
mm,
gifts, how to visit well, how to have good
mm,
conversations, how to ask people for money at a level that's good
mm,
for them, that can bring them a lot of joy. And so
mm,
my boss gave me the green light. I took your course, I think it was in the fall of 2023 or somewhere around there,
mm,
and that really inspired me. I was like, boy, I can do this. Like I know
mm.
this stuff. I
Yeah.
can do this. And put together my own version of curriculum and launched that with two different clients for free. I
Mm,
said, I just reached out literally on Facebook, two
mm,
entities. One was recommended by a friend, the other one I just followed on Facebook and found and reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in learning how to
mm,
fundraise for major gifts? I'll work with you for free for 6 months of weekly virtual coaching sessions. And
mm.
both of them were like, yeah, free, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so I put together a contract and we signed it. And the only thing in there for pay was that if they had success in major gifts fundraising and raising money, that I just asked for some written testimonies
Mm,
that I could use moving forward,
mm,
whatever God's plan was for this whole endeavor. So that was into
yeah.
the fall of 2023, into the spring of 2024. One of those clients actually became my first paid client. The
Mm,
other one had success, but they just couldn't continue on in a paid fashion.
mm,
But that was like, geez, like this is like based on what we were charging, and based on the value that they had gotten so far, like the amount of money. This is more money than we've made as a side hustle than Jake's Bakes did. Like we got to sell a lot of sourdough bread to make what we do, teaching people how to raise a bunch of money. And so
yeah.
maybe we can lean into this. And so it's the spring of 2024, and then towards the end of summer last year, 2024,
Mm,
some people started approaching us, and not that we were really promoting it a ton. We were still discerning if this is where God was calling us with this. And people must have talked, we shared with family members and some friends, and they must have shared with other people. And some folks reached out to us and inquired about exactly like what are our
mm,
services and what do we do. And it got to a point in the early fall of last year where we were looking at signing contracts that could really help, like would springboard us to going full time and
mm,
relying on the finances of this. And like our
mm,
situation, we're a single income household. My wife's stay at home full time with the kiddos. We
mm,
homeschool, so we got all kinds of stuff happening at home. We're busy with
mm,
little kids, but we just really felt like God was calling us to a deeper trust in Him with this
mm,
endeavor, with the care of our family. Like there's so much
mm.
safety around employer subsidized healthcare,
Yeah.
stable income. You go to work, you get paid to do a job, you leave, you probably have a good degree of satisfaction, but it's
Mm,
stable. And that was
yeah.
terrifying. And I went through multiple rounds of spiritual direction with my priest. I talked to mentors and friends. Like, is this too risky? Is this the right
Mm,
time? There's all kinds of excuses that would have allowed us to say, let's wait and let's keep
mm,
this as a side hustle. But we didn't do that. We
mm,
decided to go full time with it, and it was super hard to leave the University of Mary. I loved working there, and we just felt God was
mm,
calling us to at least try this. And I didn't want to be 90 years old on my deathbed thinking I should have done that. I should have
yeah.
taken the chance, and I didn't want my kids to see their dad as someone that never took a shot, to see their mom
Mm,
and dad never take a shot. And
mm,
my wife and I talked a lot about that. Is like, what type of example do we want to be for our kids? And
mm,
do we want to be people that were courageous enough to give it a shot? And if it
mm,
fails and it all falls apart, that's fine. What's the lesson to learn in that? But to really give it a true shot. So I put in my notice, and that was
mm,
super hard. And we went full time last fall, September. And by the grace of God, we have clients across North Dakota right now hopefully soon in other states. Our
Hmm.
entire model is virtual, and the point is that we wanted to own all of our time and be able to work
Hmm.
from wherever to have maximum flexibility with our family, but also charge an amount where it financially made sense. But in business, I think in business, a key one of the best pieces of advice that I ever received, and then freely give now, is that in business you have to provide way more value in your service or product than what you charge for.
Hmm.
And if you can create a model around that, you got a winning model. If people are going to find way more value than what you're charging for, you got a winning model. And that's been our
Hmm.
experience so far. And we'll see how long God has planned for this whole endeavor. And then he's
Hmm.
put other people in our purview. Like he's now we have a coaching team. So
Hmm.
it's we have major gifts fundraisers on our team that teach our curriculum to their own clients under our umbrella. We have artificial intelligence, AI, and data automation services.
Hmm.
We have a Dave Ramsey certified business and financial advisor who's got like
Hmm.
20 years of nonprofit bookkeeping experience, so we can help our
Hmm.
clients fix their financial mess if they're just like not
Hmm.
knowing how to deal with their books. And then we have an investor coach, so we can
Hmm.
advise on those really high net worth individuals who are looking to make a gift, but maybe it's a multifaceted gift that's $1 million and half of it's cash. A percentage
Hmm.
of it is an IRA retirement account distribution, stock transfers, another portion, and then we're waiting for some farmland to be sold. And what are
Hmm.
all the tax implications of all these things, and how do you maximize that for your donor? And how do you maximize that for the nonprofit client that you're serving? And it's just been a
Hmm.
lot of fun. And
Hmm.
at the base level, the most important thing is that people are raising a lot of money, and they're
Hmm.
well on their way to raising a lot of money. And there's just so much that comes down to getting over anxiety around
Hmm.
asking for that money and having some good strategy. But back to the joy piece, like it all just comes down to joy. That's all we're doing, is inviting our donors to experience the joy of giving to our mission, and they can only do
Hmm.
that by giving to our mission, and we have to invite them. So this has just
Hmm.
been it's just been tremendous fun, and I love it, and I
Yeah.
hope it's what God has planned for us for the long haul.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, congratulations. So
Thank you.
cool to see. Man, yeah, well, I'm trying to think what else yeah, so have you made it to the 1 year mark since you made the switch to full time?
Not full time. That'll be this September. Will be our 1 year mark. But we've as a side hustle. We made it to the 1 year mark. That would have been in fall of 2023 when we officially launched as a side hustle. But full time will be in September. And yeah, it's just been income wise. And the first hurdle was getting over the anxiety of starting this business.
Hmm.
If I had a piece of advice for people if that are looking to do this, is you got to ask the right people a lot of questions. And I think there is a degree of where people ask the wrong people questions,
Hmm.
people that don't have the experience they're looking for. They're too emotionally biased. It might be a
Yeah.
parent that doesn't want you to do this, or maybe someone that's way too excited that wants you to move way too fast in this.
Hmm.
Asking the right people good questions is really important. And you've been
Hmm.
that for me. Like
Hmm.
taking your course and having the conversation with you, you're
Hmm.
doing what I wanted to do. And so I reached out. I found you on LinkedIn. And that's the
Hmm.
beauty of that platform, is being able to make
Hmm.
these different types of connections, and like authentically so, and then people
Hmm.
wanting to help each other. I think that's
Yeah.
also a special thing in the nonprofit, particularly the fundraising world, is that you can't be takers as fundraisers.
Hmm.
Like you're asking people to give, you also have to be a giver, whether that's
Yeah.
of money, of your time, of your talent. And so many people have certainly given us knowledge freely that has
Hmm.
helped us do this thing. And I love the opportunity to share knowledge freely with others. We've been
Yeah.
blessed, and we love blessing others with the knowledge that we've been freely given. And
Hmm.
it's just been so amazing. But we'll celebrate a year this fall,
Sweet.
and the income's been great. We've been able to sustain our family well, and invest, and have more time to think about different ways to create
Hmm.
services under our umbrella that are actually
Hmm.
valuable to people,
Hmm.
that small to middle nonprofits, some bigger ones, actually need. They're strapped for staff time. They don't
Hmm.
have the staff. We don't fundraise for people. We teach them how to fundraise, and then we have some other services that we can help them with. But I love the ability for us to help people level set their capacity to raise
Mm,
major gifts when they're wearing 12 different hats and they can't even see a path forward. They need the money. Everyone needs the
yeah.
money yesterday, but having a coach to be able to kind of paint that picture of like, you could do this.
Mm,
And it's really not that hard. This isn't rocket science, but it's a business of overcoming anxiety, particularly in America, of asking people for
mm,
money. So part of it's life coaching to help people work through
mm.
that anxiety as well. And it's just been a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I would, for those listening that are like, if I were to give some advice to people who are thinking about doing this or making this transition, like notice in Jake's story that like obviously you did things intentionally to make this happen, but also there's a lot of people that just recognize you're good at this, and like your was it your sister-in-law or whoever it was
Yep.
who was like, you should think about doing this, and then like you start it and then the word just starts spreading and people are reaching out to you. Like I see a lot of people who want to get started doing some sort of coaching or consulting, and there is absolutely zero inbound traffic. And it's like, if that's the case, like this probably just isn't for you. Like if you're really good at this, there are very few people that are, and so it's like people recognize it pretty quickly and want your input and want your help. And if it feels like you're just constantly trying to go up this mountain that's impossible to climb, you're probably just not there yet. And that's okay, but like you need to recognize that. Otherwise, you're just going to keep trying to go up this impossible thing, and it's just going to be a massive headache. Whereas like everybody that I've seen that it works out for, like it just works because it's obviously, like you were saying, like when it's very obvious that the value that you provide is far greater than what you receive in payment, it just like it's almost like this unstoppable thing that just keeps going on its own.
Yeah, you got to have experience to do that. You know, if there are people who are like in year one and they're going, I can't deal with a boss, I want to start my own thing. It's not the case. Like you have to know what you're talking about. That's the case for any business. You have to be adaptable. You have to be approachable. Like in the business of fundraising, just as a full-time fundraiser,
Hmm.
your personality is half the battle. You know, certainly there
Hmm.
can be some introverted people that can be really good major gifts fundraisers. There can certainly be some people who are way too extroverted and they're not really good at being
Hmm.
active listeners. There's definitely a
Hmm.
full spectrum of the right type of personality that could be a good fundraiser. But in my business, I have found with my clients that it's much easier to have a fundraiser that might be a little bit maybe overactive. They're a little bit more outgoing, and you have to rein them in a little bit than to
Hmm.
build someone up who's really timid. Because
Yeah.
this is this type of work AI can't replace. We've certainly built
Hmm.
some AI tools to help complement the work of a fundraiser, but the work of human to human interaction cannot be
Hmm.
replaced by a machine. And that takes a level of finesse and confidence,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit of ego on the fundraiser's part. I mean, you got to really
Hmm.
like what you're doing and what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and know that you're good at it. And people, like you said, they're going to recognize that. And
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in starting things as a side hustle. I'm a
Yeah.
big like be your own
For sure.
capital and fund the side hustle to
Hmm.
test the waters. I think there are a lot of people. I've seen this in the farmers market world. People are just like, boy, I had 2 months of great sales. It's my first year doing it, and then they go and rent a space to try to expand production, and then I can't think of a single one that hasn't failed inside of the same year. The rent
Right.
of that space was way too much. They purchased equipment and they just got too excited too quick. I think definitely when you're charging a certain price that is reasonable for the value that you provide and someone actually pays you for that, that's a real turning point.
Hmm.
And I would not advocate to like start charging small amounts to try to get into the market. I would very much more advocate and advise people to make sure you're providing a high
Hmm.
value service that is actually, hopefully predictably in some case, going to
Hmm.
be providing an extreme amount of value to the client, and then charge a commensurate price that isn't cheap. but not
Yeah.
too expensive. People associate cheap price with cheap quality. But if you charge way too much, the expectations of a client can be way too high and
Yeah.
unreasonable. And you can ask other professionals in the industry, what are they charging? What does that look like on a monthly basis, an annual basis, quarterly basis, a per project base, whatever the case may be. And it varies widely based on number of years a coach has been in the industry, the different types of services they offer. It varies wildly, but it all comes down to, if you provide more value than what you're charging for, there are people who are going to pay that.
Yeah.
But you have to
For
be able to
sure.
provide the value.
Indeed. Well, Jake, anything we didn't cover today that you want to get into?
Hmm. I'm just I think that's all. But I'm super grateful for the opportunity for us to chat. It's really good to chat with you again. I'm just so grateful. You've been a good mentor for me. Your course has been transformative for me. It's really helped be a catalyst for where we're at now. And I would encourage people who are on the fence of taking the course to do so, to make that investment. Kevin doesn't charge a low price for his courses, but the value in which you can receive based on the price has propelled my business courses. But the value in which you can to sustain helping my family along this journey and helping all of the clients that are now being impacted through our ability to help them.
Yeah. Well, you're super welcome, and yeah, I love. Yeah, it's just awesome getting to see people like you getting after it. And like you were saying, it's like there's just things that I came across or people put in front of me that I benefited from, and so it's like want to spread the word and help out, because yeah, it's just a total game changer for your family when you can just be there and not have to be at the office for 10 hours a day or whatever it is. And
Yeah,
so yeah, really proud of you. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and look forward to staying in touch.
you bet. Thank you so much for the opportunity.